Mafia boss was always sick, until the cleaning lady discovered the whole truth. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the DeMarco mansion's study, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors. Sophia had been meticulously dusting the endless shelves of leather-bound books when she heard the heavy footsteps approaching. Her first day on the job, and already she was about to meet the infamous Luca DeMarco. She quickly stepped aside as the door swung open. Luca strode in, his presence immediately filling the room. He was exactly as Marco had described, tall, imposing, with sharp features that seemed carved from marble. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, speaking of wealth and power that Sophia could only imagine. But something was off. Despite his commanding presence, she noticed the slight sheen of sweat on his forehead, the way his hand trembled as he reached for the crystal glass on his desk. "Sir," she murmured, keeping her eyes lowered as she'd been instructed. He didn't acknowledge her, which was expected. To him, she was just another servant, invisible in the grand scheme of his world. The sound of ice clinking against crystal filled the quiet room as he poured himself a drink. Sophia continued her work, trying to appear focused on the dust cloth in her hands, but her trained nurse's eye couldn't help but notice the way he swayed slightly. Then it happened. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. Luca doubled over, his face contorting in agony. His knees buckled, and he grabbed the edge of his desk, knuckles white with strain. "Mr. DeMarco?" Sophia took an instinctive step forward, her medical training kicking in, despite Marco's strict instructions to never approach the boss without permission. The door burst open as Marco rushed in, his face tight with concern. "Boss?" Luca's eyes were glazing over, his breathing labored. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he collapsed, Marco barely catching him before he hit the ground. Sophia stood frozen, her heart pounding. She'd seen enough medical emergencies to know this wasn't normal. The sudden onset, the way his body had seized up. This wasn't food poisoning or a simple stomach bug. Marco cradled Luca's unconscious form, his expression grim. "Get the doctor," he barked at someone in the hallway. Sophia couldn't tear her eyes away from Luca's face. Even unconscious, pain etched deep lines around his mouth. His skin had taken on a sickly pallor, and his breathing was shallow and irregular. She watched as Marco effortlessly lifted his boss, years of training evident in the careful way he handled the unconscious man. As they disappeared through the door, Sophia remained rooted to the spot, her mind racing. The study fell silent except for the soft ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. The shattered glass lay forgotten on the floor, liquid seeping into the expensive carpet. Sophia moved toward it, drawn by something she couldn't quite explain. Kneeling beside the mess, she picked up the unbroken glass that remained on Luca's desk. Years of working in emergency medicine had taught her to trust her instincts. And right now, every instinct was screaming that something was very wrong. She lifted the glass to her nose, catching a faint but distinct odor. It wasn't the sharp bite of whiskey or the sweetness of bourbon. This was something else, something that shouldn't be there at all. Her pulse quickened as the pieces started falling into place. The sudden onset of symptoms, the physical collapse, the strange smell in the glass. This wasn't illness. This was something far more deliberate. Her hands trembled as she held the glass, the weight of her discovery settling heavy in her stomach. Someone was trying to poison Luca DeMarco, and she was now the only person who knew. Sophia's hands shook as she picked up the shards of broken glass from the carpet. The study felt different now, oppressive, with secrets hanging heavy in the air like storm clouds. Every shadow seemed to hold a whisper, Every corner concealed a threat she couldn't quite name. The crystal fragments clinked together as she deposited them in a waste bin. Her mind kept replaying Luca's collapse, the way color had drained from his face, how his powerful frame had crumpled like paper. She'd seen plenty of medical emergencies during her years as a nurse. But this was different. This was calculated. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked away the minutes, its steady rhythm the only sound in the massive house. No footsteps in the hallway, no voices discussing what had happened. Just silence. The kind of silence that spoke volumes in a house full of secrets. She moved to Luca's desk, running her cloth over the polished mahogany. The surface was immaculate, everything arranged with military precision. Files aligned perfectly, pens organized by size. A man who demanded control in every aspect of his life. The top drawer was slightly ajar, something golden catching the afternoon light. Sophia hesitated, her heart drumming against her ribs. She shouldn't look. She was just the cleaning lady hired this morning. Looking through the boss's desk would probably get her fired. Or worse, considering who he was. But the memory of his collapse pushed her forward. With trembling fingers, she pulled the drawer open wider. There, nestled in black velvet, lay an ornate gold chain with a heavy pendant. She recognized it immediately. The necklace Luca had been wearing earlier, before Marco had rushed him away. The pendant was beautiful, ancient-looking, with intricate designs etched into its surface. Family crest, maybe, or some symbol of power in his world. Sophia lifted it carefully, the metal cool against her palm. That's when she caught it. A faint metallic smell, sharp and wrong, clinging to the gold like an invisible film. She brought it closer to her nose, her medical training kicking in. The scent was subtle but distinctive, reminding her of certain medications she'd handled in the hospital. Her mind raced. The necklace had been against his skin, close to his mouth when he drank. If someone had treated it with something toxic. The door burst open, making her jump. Marco filled the doorway, his massive frame blocking the light from the hall. His face darkened when he saw what she was holding. "Put that down," he growled, taking a step toward her. "Now!" Sophia's fingers tightened around the pendant. She could feel her pulse in her throat, but years of dealing with aggressive patients had taught her not to show fear. "Something's wrong with Mr. DeMarco's health," she said, keeping her voice steady. "This necklace, that's none of your concern." Marco's eyes were hard as steel. "You're here to clean, nothing more. Put it down and get out." Sophia stood her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to run. The necklace felt heavy in her hand, weighted with suspicion and danger. She knew she should obey, should walk away, and forget what she'd seen. But the nurse in her, the part that had sworn to help people, wouldn't let her back down. The tension crackled between them like electricity, neither willing to break first. Marco's scowl deepened, his patience clearly wearing thin. But Sophia held firm, the necklace clutched in her hand like a lifeline, her mind racing with possibilities she didn't dare voice aloud. The morning sun streamed through the mansion's tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Sophia stood in the hallway, her cleaning cart beside her, wrestling with the decision to stay. Every instinct told her to walk away from the DeMarco mansion and never look back. But the image of Luca's collapse haunted her, along with the strange metallic smell from that necklace. She'd spent the entire night researching poisoning symptoms, her old medical textbooks spread across her tiny apartment kitchen table. The signs matched perfectly. The sudden weakness, the recurring nature of his illness, the way it seemed to strike without warning. The mansion felt different today. Quieter, more watchful. Her footsteps echoed as she pushed her cart down the hallway, past the heavy wooden door of Luca's study. She glanced inside, expecting it to be empty. The necklace lay on his desk, catching the morning light. Sophia's heart jumped. She looked both ways down the corridor. Empty. No sign of Marco or any other staff. Just the quiet ticking of that massive grandfather clock and her own shallow breathing. She stepped into the study, leaving her cart by the door. The necklace seemed to call to her, its golden surface gleaming innocently. But there was nothing innocent about it. Not with that strange smell, not with Luca's mysterious illness. With trembling fingers, she picked it up. The metal was cool against her skin, the weight substantial. She turned it over, examining every inch. The pendant was beautifully crafted, covered in intricate designs that seemed to flow into each other. Family crests, she realized, tracing them with her finger. Generation after generation of DeMarco power, encoded in gold. But something wasn't right. The weight was off, too heavy for its size. And there, along the edge, a nearly invisible seam. Sophia's nursing training had taught her to trust her instincts. Right now, every one of them was screaming that she'd found something important. She pressed gently along the seam, feeling for any give. Click. The pendant split open in her hands, revealing a tiny compartment inside. Her breath caught. There, clinging to the inner walls, were traces of a white, crystalline substance. She brought it closer, careful not to touch the residue. The metallic smell was stronger now, unmistakable. Horror washed over her as the pieces clicked into place. The necklace wasn't just jewelry. It was the perfect delivery system. Something Luca wore every day, close to his skin. The heat of his body would warm the metal, causing whatever was inside to slowly seep out day after day. Just enough to make him sick, but not enough to kill him. Someone wanted him weakened, vulnerable. Someone close enough to have access to a family heirloom. Someone patient enough to play the long game. Sophia stared at the open pendant, her mind racing. She wasn't just a cleaning lady anymore. She was holding proof of attempted murder in her hands. The knowledge felt dangerous, like a lit match in a room full of gasoline. One wrong move and everything would explode. The necklace suddenly felt heavier, weighted with the gravity of her discovery. She had to make a choice. Pretend she never saw this and walk away, or step into something far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made her freeze. Heavy, measured steps coming closer to the study. Her heart pounded as she stared at the open pendant in her hands, the evidence of treachery gleaming in the morning light. Sophia's fingers trembled as she traced the lines of text in the ancient medical book. The mansion's library was a sanctuary of dark wood and leather-bound volumes, silent except for the soft rustle of pages. Late afternoon sun filtered through heavy curtains, casting long shadows across the Persian rug. She'd found the medical section tucked away in a corner, dusty volumes that probably hadn't been touched in years. Her nursing background helped her navigate the complex terminology, but this was different from her usual medical research. These books dealt with darker subjects, poisons, toxins, and their effects on the human body. The symptoms matched perfectly with what she'd observed in Luca: recurring weakness, sudden onset of illness, followed by periods of recovery. The poison was meant to weaken, not kill, a strategy that made terrible sense: keep the victim alive but vulnerable, unable to maintain their usual strength and authority. Sophia pulled another heavy tome from the shelf, this one focusing on metallurgy and chemical reactions. The metallic smell from the necklace had been distinctive. She needed to understand how the pendant itself played a role in the poisoning. Hours passed as she pieced it together. The pendant's metal composition would react with body heat, slowly releasing the toxin. It was brilliant in its simplicity, constant exposure, nearly impossible to detect unless you knew exactly what to look for. Her heart raced when she finally found it in a chapter about rare metalloid-based poisons. The description matched perfectly. Colorless crystals, metallic odor, symptoms that mimicked recurring illness. The book even included historical references to its use in similar schemes. Slow poisoning of nobility through jewelry and personal items. She was so absorbed in her discovery that she didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. "What are you doing here?" Marco's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Sophia's head snapped up to find him standing in the doorway, his broad frame blocking the exit. His eyes, usually impassive, held a dangerous edge as they swept over the open books scattered across the table. "I was just—" Sophia's mind raced for an explanation. "Cleaning. The library needed dusting." "With medical books?" Marco stepped closer, his movements deliberate and predatory. He picked up one of the volumes, reading its spine. "Toxicology and chemical warfare? Strange reading material for a cleaning lady." Sophia forced herself to stay calm, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "I used to be a nurse. Sometimes I miss reading medical texts. It helps me keep my knowledge current." "In the DeMarco family library, after hours?" Marco's voice dropped lower, more threatening. He placed both hands on the table, leaning forward. "Let me be clear. You're here to clean. Nothing more. Whatever you think you're investigating, whatever you think you found, it doesn't concern you." The threat in his words was unmistakable. Sophia met his gaze, trying to keep her voice steady. "I understand. I was just curious. It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't." Marco straightened, his eyes cold. "Some curiosities are dangerous to indulge. People who stick their noses where they don't belong tend to regret it." Sophia nodded, gathering her cleaning supplies with trembling hands. But beneath her show of submission, determination burned bright. She'd found the proof she needed. Someone was slowly poisoning Luca DeMarco, and now she knew exactly how they were doing it. Marco watched her every move as she packed up, his presence a silent warning. But Sophia had crossed a line she couldn't step back from. She knew too much, had seen too much. Whatever the consequences, she was already entangled in this dangerous web of secrets and betrayal. The sun had begun its descent when the black Mercedes pulled up to the mansion's circular driveway. Sophia was wiping down the grand foyer's windows when she heard the commotion outside. Through the spotless glass, she watched as Marco rushed from the passenger side to help Luca out of the back seat. Luca's usual commanding presence was diminished. His designer suit, normally impeccable, was wrinkled. His face was ashen, dark circles prominent under his eyes. He leaned heavily on Marco, his movements unsteady as they made their way toward the entrance. Sophia stepped back from the window, pressing herself against the wall as they entered. Her heart clenched at the sight of him up close. Despite his weakened state, Luca still carried an aura of danger, like a wounded predator, perhaps even more lethal because of his vulnerability. "Get me to my room," Luca growled, his voice rough with pain. His eyes briefly met Sophia's, and something flickered in their depths, recognition, perhaps, or warning. She couldn't look away. Marco shot her a pointed look. "Make yourself useful. Bring water and fresh towels to Mr. DeMarco's room." Sophia nodded, hurrying to gather the requested items. Her mind raced with the knowledge of what was causing his illness. The necklace, the very thing meant to represent his family's power, was slowly destroying him. The irony wasn't lost on her. When she arrived at his bedroom door, she could hear low voices inside. She knocked softly. "Enter," Marco called out. The master bedroom was massive, decorated in rich browns and deep burgundies. Luca sat on the edge of his king-sized bed, his jacket discarded, shirt partially unbuttoned. The golden necklace glinted against his chest, and Sophia had to stop herself from staring at it. The source of his weakness, right there in plain sight. "Leave them on the side table," Marco instructed. Sophia moved carefully across the room, aware of Luca's eyes following her every movement. The air felt charged, heavy with unspoken tensions. As she set down the towels, she caught a glimpse of his face in the mirror. His jaw was clenched, fighting against whatever pain racked his body. "Is there anything else you need, Mr. DeMarco?" The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Luca's gaze sharpened, focusing on her with surprising intensity despite his condition. "You're new here?" "Yes, sir. Sophia Vitelli. I started this week." A small smile tugged at his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Ah, the cleaning lady Marco hired. How are you finding the mansion?" "It's impressive," she answered carefully, her heart racing under his scrutiny. "Leave us," Marco interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. Sophia ducked her head and retreated, but not before catching one last glimpse of Luca. He'd closed his eyes, pain etched across his features, one hand absently touching the cursed necklace. Later that night, she returned to clean his room as scheduled. The house was quiet, most of the staff gone for the day. Luca had been moved to the medical wing of the mansion, leaving his bedroom empty and still holding traces of his presence. Lingering cologne, an empty glass on the nightstand, a suit jacket draped over a chair. As she moved through her cleaning routine, Sophia's mind wandered to the mystery of who could be behind the poisoning. Someone close enough to access his personal belongings, someone who knew about the necklace's significance. A slight movement caught her eye. In the corner of the room, nearly hidden by an ornate crown molding, something reflected the dim light. Sophia's breath caught in her throat as she realized what it was. A small, sophisticated surveillance camera, its lens trained directly on the room. Her blood ran cold. The camera meant everything she'd done, every time she'd examined the necklace, or lingered too long looking at Luca's belongings, had been recorded. Marco, or whoever was watching the feeds, would have seen it all. The duster trembled in her hand as implications crashed over her. She wasn't just an observer in this dangerous game anymore. She was a player, whether she wanted to be or not. And now she knew she was being watched. Morning light filtered through the heavy curtains of Luca's study as Sophia methodically dusted the dark wooden shelves. Her movements were precise, careful, trying to maintain an air of normalcy despite the weight of yesterday's discovery pressing on her mind. The surveillance camera's presence had changed everything. Each gesture now felt observed, calculated. The door clicked open behind her. Sophia's spine stiffened as expensive Italian leather shoes crossed the threshold. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Luca's presence filled the room like a gathering storm. The air grew thick with tension as he closed the door behind him. She forced herself to continue cleaning, though her hands trembled slightly. The sound of his measured footsteps drew closer, circling her like a predator sizing up its prey. When she finally gathered the courage to look up, she found his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Luca looked better than yesterday, his expensive charcoal suit perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders. The cursed necklace gleamed against his crisp white shirt. But there was something different about him today, a dangerous edge to his usual composure, like a tightly coiled spring ready to snap. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone was suffocating, filling every corner of the room with unspoken questions and barely concealed threats. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs as she tried to maintain her composure, to keep her movements steady and purposeful. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Sophia could feel his eyes tracking her every move as she worked, could sense him analyzing her reactions. She wondered if he could hear her racing heartbeat, if he could see through her carefully constructed facade of innocence. When she reached to dust a higher shelf, her sleeve rode up slightly, and she felt his gaze zero in on the exposed skin of her wrist. The intensity of his attention made her feel naked, vulnerable. Yet beneath the fear coursing through her veins was something else, a dangerous flutter of attraction she couldn't quite suppress. Luca moved closer, his cologne, expensive and intoxicating, enveloping her senses. He was close enough now that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the subtle patterns in his silk tie. His proximity made it hard to think, hard to remember why she needed to keep her distance. She made the mistake of meeting his eyes again. They were dark pools of intensity, searching her face for something. Answers, perhaps, or signs of deception. There was knowledge there, hidden behind that predatory gaze, that made her wonder just how much he'd figured out about her investigation. His hand moved, and Sophia's breath hitched. But he merely reached past her to pick up a crystal decanter from his desk. The movement brought him even closer, his chest nearly brushing against her back. Time seemed to slow as he poured water into 2 glasses, his movements deliberate and precise. The room felt smaller somehow, the air between them charged with electricity. Sophia couldn't tell if this was an interrogation or something else entirely. The way he moved, the way he watched her, it spoke of both threat and seduction, danger and desire intertwined in a way that made her head spin. When he finally turned back to her, glass in hand, his expression was unreadable. There was something almost cruel in the way he let the moment stretch, in how he seemed to savor her discomfort. The morning light caught the edges of his jaw, highlighting the dangerous beauty of his features. His arm extended, offering her the glass of water. Sophia's throat went dry at the simple gesture that felt weighted with hidden meaning. As she reached for the glass, their fingers brushed, a brief contact that sent a jolt of electricity through her entire body. The touch lasted only a second, but it left her skin burning, her pulse racing with a dangerous mixture of fear and wanting. Sophia waited until the mansion grew quiet, her heart thundering in her chest as she slipped into Luca's study. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the tall windows, and her hands trembled as she approached his massive mahogany desk. She knew she was crossing a line, but the image of Luca's pain-twisted face haunted her. The desk drawer stuck slightly as she pulled it open. Inside, neat stacks of folders lined the space, each labeled with precise handwriting. She began sorting through them, careful to maintain their exact order. Financial reports, property deeds, and what looked like coded messages filled the pages. A particular folder caught her attention. It contained photographs of various DeMarco family members. Her fingers traced over their faces, noting the family resemblance in their sharp features and dark eyes. One photo showed a younger Luca standing beside his father. They shared the same commanding presence, but Luca's eyes held something his father's didn't, a hint of vulnerability beneath the steel. Moving to the filing cabinet, Sophia found more recent documents. Something about the numbers didn't add up. Large sums of money were being moved through shell companies, but the pattern seemed erratic, desperate even. She recognized signs of financial strain hidden beneath layers of accounting tricks. A leather-bound ledger revealed more troubling details. Several family businesses were hemorrhaging money, and someone was covering it up. Sophia's nursing salary hadn't prepared her for understanding complex financial documents, but even she could see the DeMarco empire was facing internal struggles. Her attention shifted to a stack of medical reports, all relating to Luca's mysterious illness. The doctors seemed baffled, unable to identify the cause of his recurring symptoms. But something else caught her eye. Dates. The problems had started shortly after a major family gathering 6 months ago. A creaking floorboard made her freeze. "What do you think you're doing?" Marco's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Sophia's stomach dropped as she turned to face him. He filled the doorway, his expression dark with anger. The afternoon light cast harsh shadows across his face, making him look even more menacing. "I was just cleaning," she said, but the lie felt hollow even to her own ears. Marco stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Don't insult my intelligence. You're going through Mr. DeMarco's private files." Sophia's mind raced. She could feel her careful facade crumbling under his scrutiny. "I was worried about him," she admitted, deciding a partial truth might be better than a complete lie. "He's been so ill." "Why do you care?" Marco's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You're just the cleaning lady. You've been here barely a week." "Because I'm a nurse," Sophia said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "Or I was. Before—" She cut herself off, realizing she'd revealed too much. Marco's expression shifted slightly. "A nurse?" He moved closer, his presence intimidating in the confined space. "Is that why you've been watching him so closely? Studying his symptoms?" Sophia lifted her chin, meeting his gaze despite her fear. "I can't help noticing things. It's my training." "And what exactly have you noticed?" His tone was deadly quiet. She could feel the tension building in the room, knew she was walking a dangerous line. "Just that his illness seems unusual. The pattern of symptoms, the timing." Marco studied her for a long moment, his face unreadable. "You need to be very careful, Miss Vitelli. Your curiosity could get you into trouble." "Are you going to tell him?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "That depends," Marco replied, his eyes boring into hers. "On whether you're going to tell me the real reason you're so interested in Mr. DeMarco's health." Sophia's mind whirled. She couldn't tell him about the poison, about her suspicions. Not yet. Not until she knew who she could trust. "I told you, I'm concerned. As a medical professional, I can't ignore someone suffering when I might be able to help." Sophia's fingers trembled as she dusted the crystal vases in Luca's private sitting room. The evening sun painted golden streaks across the Persian carpet, and the air felt thick with tension. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even though she was alone. Or thought she was. "You missed a spot." The deep voice made her jump. Luca DeMarco stood in the doorway, one shoulder pressed against the frame. Despite his pallor and the slight tremor in his hand, he commanded the space like a king in his castle. His presence filled the room, making it harder for Sophia to breathe. "Mr. DeMarco," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I didn't hear you come in." His dark eyes studied her, and a ghost of a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "You're not supposed to. That's rather the point of my position, isn't it?" Sophia returned to her dusting, trying to ignore how her skin prickled under his gaze. Even weakened by poison, he radiated danger and power. It rolled off him in waves, making her pulse quicken. "You're different from the others," he said suddenly, pushing away from the doorframe. His movements were fluid, despite his condition, like a predator conserving energy. "Most people can't even look me in the eye." As if to prove his point, he stepped closer, and Sophia found herself caught in his stare. His eyes were deep brown, almost black, with flecks of gold that matched the fading sunlight. The intensity in them made her breath catch. "I'm just doing my job, Mr. DeMarco," she managed to say, but her voice came out softer than intended. He moved closer still, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "Are you?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Just doing your job?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs as she forced herself to hold his gaze. One heartbeat passed, then another. The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Finally, he broke the connection, turning away with a slight grimace. His hand went to his stomach, another wave of poison-induced pain, she realized. The vulnerability in that small gesture struck her harder than his intimidating presence had. "You should rest," she said before she could stop herself, her medical training kicking in. He shot her a sharp look over his shoulder. "Are you giving me orders now?" "No, Sophia started, but he cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Leave me," he commanded, his voice tight with pain. "Finish the rest later." Sophia hesitated only a moment before gathering her cleaning supplies. As she passed him, his hand shot out, catching her wrist. His touch sent electricity racing up her arm. "Whatever game you're playing," he said softly, dangerously, "remember who I am." She pulled her hand free, trying to ignore how her skin tingled where he'd touched her. Without another word, she left the room, her heart still racing. Later that night, she returned to complete her duties. The mansion was quiet, shadows dancing on the walls from the moonlight streaming through the windows. In Luca's bedroom, she worked quickly, straightening the already immaculate space. As she fluffed his pillows, something fluttered to the floor. A piece of paper, folded several times. She knew she should leave it alone, but her fingers moved of their own accord, unfolding the crisp sheet. The message was mostly in code, strings of numbers and letters that meant nothing to her. But one word stood out, written in clear Italian. Matteo. Sophia stared at the name, an inexplicable chill running down her spine. Something about it felt wrong, like finding a snake coiled in a flower bed. She carefully refolded the paper and tucked it back exactly where she'd found it, but the name stayed with her, echoing in her mind like a warning bell. Sophia's arms ached as she carried fresh linens through the mansion's dimly lit hallway. The morning sun hadn't yet reached this wing, leaving shadows in every corner. As she approached Luca's study, voices drifted through the partially open door. "Dare you question my loyalty?" Marco's usually steady voice trembled with anger. "I question everyone these days." Luca's tone was ice cold. "Someone close to me wants me dead, and you're always conveniently nearby when these episodes happen." Sophia pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding. She shouldn't be listening, but she couldn't move. "I've protected you since we were children," Marco said. "I would die for you, Luca." "Would you?" A chair scraped across the hardwood floor. "Then explain why you were seen meeting with my enemies last week." "Business. On your behalf. You know this." "Do I?" Sophia heard footsteps approaching the door, and quickly busied herself with adjusting the linens in her arms. Marco burst out, his face twisted with rage. He barely glanced at her as he stormed past. "Clean the study," he barked over his shoulder. Taking a deep breath, Sophia entered the room. Luca stood by the window, his broad shoulders tense beneath his tailored suit. Morning light caught the gold chain around his neck, the poisoned necklace. "Mr. DeMarco," she said softly. He didn't turn around. "Get on with it." Sophia moved about the room, dusting and straightening, hyper-aware of his presence. The air felt charged, like before a thunderstorm. She noticed his hands were shaking slightly. "You don't look well," she ventured. "Should I bring you some water? Always watching, aren't you?" He finally turned, fixing her with those intense, dark eyes. "What else have you noticed during your time here?" Sophia's mouth went dry. I just cleaned, sir." "No." He moved closer, each step deliberate despite his obvious discomfort. "You see things, notice things. Like right now you're cataloging every sign of weakness in my movements." She swallowed hard. He wasn't wrong. "Your medical training, perhaps?" He raised an eyebrow when she stiffened. "Yes. I know about your past. I know everything about everyone who enters my home." "Then you know I was wrongly accused," Sophia said, lifting her chin. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Indeed. The question is, what are you looking for here?" Before she could answer, pain flashed across his face. He grabbed the edge of his desk, knuckles white. "Sir!" Sophia stepped forward instinctively. "Get out," he growled. She hesitated only a moment before leaving, her mind racing. The conversation she'd overheard played on repeat in her head. Marco's anger had seemed genuine, but something wasn't adding up. Later that afternoon, while Luca was in a meeting, Sophia slipped into his office. She told herself she was just doing her job, but her hands shook as she began searching through his desk drawers. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of papers, she found a photo. It showed a younger Luca, smiling, something she'd never seen him do, with his arm around another man. They looked similar enough to be brothers, with the same dark features and commanding presence. The photo was creased, well-handled. Sophia turned it over. On the back, in elegant handwriting, Luca and Matteo DeMarco, Milan, 2019. Matteo, the name from the encrypted note. She studied the photo again, noting how close they stood, how relaxed they both appeared. Cousins, but clearly once as close as brothers. What had changed? The pieces started falling into place. Someone who knew Luca's routines. Someone who had access to his personal items. Someone he trusted enough to wear a gift from them, like a family heirloom necklace. Sophia's hands grew cold as realization dawned. Matteo wasn't just a name in a note. He was the snake in Luca's garden, the traitor hiding in plain sight. She carefully returned the photo to its hiding place, her mind whirling with this new information. The real threat wasn't Marco at all. It was someone much closer to Luca's heart. The evening shadows stretched across Luca's study as Sophia's fingers trembled around the photograph. She'd waited until most of the house staff had left, knowing this confrontation couldn't wait. Her heart thundered against her ribs as she watched Luca at his desk, his face illuminated by the soft glow of his laptop. "Mr. DeMarco," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We need to talk." Luca didn't look up. "Unless the mansion is burning down, it can wait until morning." "It's about Matteo." His fingers froze over the keyboard. The silence that followed was deafening. "Get out." His voice was deadly quiet. "No." Sophia stepped forward, placing the photograph on his desk. "I know about the poison. I know someone's been using your necklace to make you sick." Luca's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, his movements fluid despite his weakened state. "You've been going through my things." It wasn't a question. "Yes." Sophia lifted her chin, refusing to back down even as he towered over her. "Because someone is trying to kill you, and you're too proud or too blind to see it." His hand shot out, gripping her arm. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to remind her who she was dealing with. "You have no idea what you're talking about." Don't I? She met his gaze. The symptoms, the timing, it's systematic. Someone with intimate access to your personal items is poisoning you. Someone who gave you that necklace. Something flickered in Luca's dark eyes. Pain, recognition, or maybe both. His grip on her arm loosened, but he didn't let go. You were a nurse, he said quietly. Before the incident at the hospital. Yes, and I know what slow poisoning looks like. Sophia's voice softened. The necklace. It was a gift from Matteo, wasn't it? Luca released her arm and turned away, bracing his hands on the desk. The muscles in his back were rigid beneath his tailored shirt. Marco, he called out. The door opened immediately, as if the bodyguard had been waiting just outside. His expression was unreadable as he entered. Take her to the East Wing study, Luca ordered. Make sure we're not disturbed. Sophia's stomach clenched as Marco led her through the dimly lit corridors. The East Wing was rarely used, its elegant furnishings draped in white sheets. Marco opened a heavy wooden door, gesturing for her to enter. Minutes later, Luca appeared. He dismissed Marco with a sharp nod and closed the door. You're either very brave or very foolish, he said, his voice echoing in the empty room. Sometimes they're the same thing. A bitter laugh escaped him. Indeed. He moved to the window, moonlight casting harsh shadows across his face. You're right about Matteo. Sophia's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to admit it so directly. The necklace was a gift for my birthday 6 months ago. Family heirloom, he said. Luca's hands clenched into fists. That's when the symptoms started. Small at first. Headaches, dizziness. I thought it was stress. But it got worse. Yes. He turned to face her. Matteo wants control of the family business. He always has. But he's patient, calculating. A quick death would raise too many questions. So he's weakening you slowly, Sophia finished, making it look like natural illness. And now you know too much. Luca stepped closer, his presence filling the room. Do you understand what that means? What happens to people who get involved in family business? Sophia's heart raced, but she stood her ground. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. His voice dropped lower. Stay out of this, Sophia. Walk away while you still can. But they both knew she couldn't. The knowledge sat heavy between them. She was already too entangled in his world, too invested in his survival. And judging by the intensity in Luca's eyes, he knew it too. Sophia crept through the darkened hallways of the DeMarco mansion, her footsteps silent against the thick carpet. The night shift guards had already made their rounds, giving her the perfect opportunity to slip into Matteo's private office. Her hands trembled as she picked the lock, a skill she'd learned from watching countless tutorials after realizing how deep this conspiracy went. The door clicked open, and she slipped inside, closing it softly behind her. Moonlight filtered through the tall windows, casting elongated shadows across the room. Unlike Luca's warm, lived-in study, Matteo's office felt cold and impersonal. Everything was meticulously arranged, almost obsessively so. She started with his desk drawers, careful to photograph everything before moving items. Her phone's screen illuminated banking statements, old correspondence, and what looked like surveillance photos. Her breath caught when she recognized several faces, all members of rival families who'd recently made moves against Luca. A leather-bound ledger caught her attention. Inside, detailed notes tracked Luca's episodes of illness, along with meeting dates with various family associates. The coincidences were too perfect. Every major business decision, every important meeting, they all aligned with Luca's worst days. Got you, she whispered, snapping photos of each page. The sound of voices in the hallway made her freeze. She recognized Matteo's smooth tenor, accompanied by unfamiliar voices speaking in hushed Italian. Sophia's heart pounded as she carefully replaced the ledger and ducked behind a heavy curtain. "The plan is working," Matteo was saying. "He's growing weaker by the day. The other families are starting to notice." "And what about the girl?" a gruff voice asked. "The new cleaning woman?" "She's nothing," Matteo replied dismissively. "Just another servant. Focus on what matters. In 3 months, Luca won't be fit to lead. The transition will appear natural." Sophia held her breath until their footsteps faded. She waited another 5 minutes before emerging, her mind racing. 3 months. That was their timeline for whatever they had planned. She made her way to Luca's study, needing to warn him. But as she approached, she heard raised voices from within. The door was slightly ajar, and she pressed herself against the wall, listening. "You're destroying everything our family built," Matteo's voice rang out, all pretense of respect gone. "Look at yourself, you can barely stand some days. The other families are laughing at us." "Watch yourself, cousin." Luca's voice was quiet, but carried an edge that made Sophia shiver. "You forget who you're speaking to." "I'm speaking to a man who's losing his grip on reality. Step down gracefully, Luca. Let someone stronger take control before everything falls apart." "Someone stronger?" Luca's laugh was cold. "You mean yourself? You've always been transparent, Matteo, always wanting what isn't yours." "I want what's best for the family. You're weak, Luca. Choose your next words carefully." The threat in Luca's voice was unmistakable. A tense silence followed before Matteo spoke again, his voice hard. "Step down, or I'll make you step down. You'll never take what's mine." Sophia pressed a hand to her mouth, suppressing a gasp. The evidence in her phone felt heavy, dangerous. She knew too much now. About the poison, about Matteo's allies, about his timeline. And judging by the deadly silence emanating from Luca's study, this confrontation was only the beginning. She backed away slowly, her mind already formulating a plan. She needed to get this information to Luca, but carefully. One wrong move, and Matteo would know she'd discovered his scheme. The weight of the situation pressed down on her. She was now in the middle of a dangerous power struggle between two of the most dangerous men she'd ever met. Sophia's fingers trembled as she reorganized the papers on Luca's desk. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the study. She'd been avoiding being alone with him since discovering Matteo's plans, but fate had other ideas. Luca entered the room, his presence immediately filling the space. Despite his illness, he moved with predatory grace, closing the door behind him. Sophia's breath hitched as he approached, his dark eyes fixed on her. "You've been avoiding me," he said, his voice low and controlled. "I'm just doing my job, Mr. DeMarco." She kept her eyes down, focusing on straightening already neat stacks of paper. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. She raised her eyes to meet his, fighting the urge to step back as he moved closer. The air between them crackled with tension. "You know something." He reached out, his fingers brushing her arm. Even that slight touch sent electricity through her. "I see it in your eyes when you look at me." Sophia's heart raced. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie to me." His voice softened, but the intensity remained. "Everyone in my life lies to me, Sophia. Don't be one of them." She watched as he moved to the window, his shoulders tense. For a moment he looked almost vulnerable, staring out at the manicured grounds of his estate. "Do you know what it's like?" he asked suddenly. "To know that everyone around you is waiting for you to fall?" Sophia remained silent, but her feet carried her closer to him. "The family business," he continued. "It's not just business. It's legacy. It's blood. Every decision I make affects hundreds of people. One wrong move." He trailed off, his jaw clenching. "And Matteo?" she ventured carefully. Luca's expression darkened. "My cousin has always wanted what isn't his. He thinks I don't see his ambition, his hunger for power." He turned to face her. "But I see everything." Their eyes met, and Sophia felt the weight of his words. He was trapped in a gilded cage of his own making, surrounded by luxury, but unable to trust anyone. "The poison," she said softly, "it's making you appear weak." His hand shot out, gripping her arm. "What do you know about that?" Instead of pulling away, Sophia stepped closer. "I was a nurse, remember? I know the signs. Someone's been slowly poisoning you, making it look like natural illness." Luca's grip loosened, but he didn't let go. His thumb traced small circles on her skin, sending shivers down her spine. "And you figured this out while cleaning my study?" "I'm observant," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. A commotion outside the study made them both tense. Footsteps approached, Matteo's distinctive gait. Luca pulled Sophia behind a bookshelf, pressing her against the wall with his body. Her heart thundered in her chest as Matteo passed by, speaking loudly on his phone about business matters. They stayed frozen until the footsteps faded. Sophia was acutely aware of every point where Luca's body touched hers, of his breath against her neck, of the warmth radiating from him. "You're playing a dangerous game," he murmured, still not moving away. "Getting involved in family matters can get you killed." "I'm already involved," she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Luca's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her bottom lip. The gesture was surprisingly gentle for a man known for his brutality. "You're the only one," he whispered, leaning close to her ear. "The only one I can trust." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. The admission hung between them, heavy with implications. She knew she was falling for him, this dangerous, complicated man who could either be her salvation or her destruction. His lips brushed against her ear, and she closed her eyes, lost in the sensation and the knowledge that there was no turning back now. The dining room of the DeMarco mansion gleamed under crystal chandeliers, the long mahogany table set for an intimate family dinner. Sophia moved quietly around the edges of the room, pretending to dust while keeping a watchful eye on Luca. She'd noticed Matteo hovering near Luca's drink earlier, and her instincts screamed danger. Luca sat at the head of the table, his presence commanding even in these private moments. Matteo lounged to his right, all easy smiles and casual conversation. To anyone else, they might have looked like the close cousins they were supposed to be. "Try the wine, cousin," Matteo said, gesturing to Luca's glass. "It's a special vintage I brought just for you." Sophia's hands tightened on her cleaning cloth. She watched as Luca lifted the glass, taking a measured sip. His eyes met hers briefly across the room, and she saw the awareness there. He knew the risk, but he couldn't show weakness by refusing. The first few minutes passed normally. Matteo discussed business matters, his voice smooth and controlled. But Sophia noticed the slight tremor in Luca's hand as he reached for his water glass. His face had grown pale, a sheen of sweat appearing on his forehead. "Are you feeling well, cousin?" Matteo's concern sounded genuine, but Sophia caught the predatory gleam in his eyes. Luca opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. His body suddenly went rigid, the glass slipping from his fingers and shattering on the floor. He clutched his chest, gasping for air. "Mr. DeMarco!" Sophia dropped all pretense, rushing to his side. Her nursing instincts took over as she caught him before he could fall from his chair. Matteo stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "Marco!" he called out. "Something's wrong with Luca." Sophia cradled Luca's head as he slumped against her, his breathing shallow and erratic. His skin burned with fever, and his pulse raced under her fingers. This was worse than his usual episodes. Whatever Matteo had given him was much stronger. "Stay with me," she whispered, her heart pounding. She couldn't lose him. Not now. Not when she'd finally admitted to herself how much he meant to her. Marco burst into the room with 2 other guards. They moved to take Luca from her arms, but she refused to let go. "I'm a trained nurse," she snapped. "He needs medical attention now." "Take him to his room," Matteo ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. "And call Dr. Romano." Sophia helped the guards carry Luca to his bedroom, her mind racing through possible treatments. This wasn't like the slow-acting poison from before. This was meant to incapacitate him quickly. She needed to act fast. In his room, she loosened his tie and shirt, her hands steady despite her fear. "Get me cold compresses," she ordered one of the guards. "And bring water, lots of it." Luca's eyes fluttered open, focusing on her face. His hand gripped hers with surprising strength. "Sophia," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "Don't try to talk," she soothed, running her fingers through his damp hair. "I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." The next hour passed in a blur of cold compresses, monitoring vital signs, and watching Luca fight through waves of pain. Dr. Romano arrived and administered treatment, but Sophia didn't leave Luca's side. She held his hand through the worst of it, whispering encouragement when he seemed ready to give up. As dawn approached, Luca's condition finally stabilized. The room had emptied except for Marco standing guard at the door. Sophia sat on the edge of Luca's bed, still holding his hand, unwilling to break contact. "It's getting worse," Luca said quietly, his voice hoarse. "The regular poisoning was bad enough, but this—" He closed his eyes, exhaustion etched on his face. "Matteo's done playing games. He wants me dead." Sophia's grip on his hand tightened. "How long have you known?" "That I'm dying?" A bitter smile crossed his face. "The doctor gave me weeks, maybe months. The poison has been in my system too long. Unless we stop Matteo—" He left the sentence unfinished. Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes, but she blinked them away. "Then we'll stop him," she said fiercely. "Whatever it takes. I won't let him take you from me." Sophia's heels clicked against the marble floor of Matteo's private office in the east wing of the DeMarco mansion. Her heart thundered in her chest, but she kept her chin high, channeling every ounce of courage she possessed. The guards at his door had let her pass. Too easily, she realized now. Matteo sat behind his massive desk, a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. Unlike Luca's study, which held warmth despite its luxury, Matteo's office felt cold and sterile. Everything was arranged with precise calculation, just like the man himself. "The cleaning lady," he drawled, not bothering to stand. "Or should I say, the nurse? You're quite far from your usual duties, aren't you?" Sophia's fingers curled into fists at her sides. "I know what you're doing to him." A smile played at the corners of his mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Do you?" He set down his glass with deliberate slowness. "And what exactly do you think you know?" "The necklace, the wine tonight, you're poisoning him. Your own cousin." The words came out sharp and accusatory, but Matteo didn't flinch. He leaned back in his leather chair, studying her with the detached interest of someone watching an insect. "You've developed quite an attachment to my dear cousin, haven't you? How touching." His voice dripped with mockery. "Tell me, does Luca know you're here, playing detective on his behalf?" "This isn't about me." "Oh, but it is." Matteo stood, circling his desk with predatory grace. You're just another piece on the board, Sophia. A pawn who thinks she's a queen. He moved closer, and Sophia forced herself not to step back. Did you really think you could walk in here and what? Get me to confess? Make me stop? He laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. You're in far over your head. He trusts you, Sophia spat. You're supposed to be family. Family? Matteo's face darkened. Luca's always been the golden child, handed everything while I worked twice as hard. He's weak. The DeMarco Empire needs stronger leadership. Sophia's anger flared. Weak? You're the one poisoning him instead of facing him directly. Careful, Matteo warned, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You're alive only because I've allowed it. Your little investigation? Your growing closeness to Luca? Did you think I didn't know? I've been watching you since the day you arrived. A chill ran down Sophia's spine as the truth hit her. She'd walked right into his trap. You see, Matteo continued, Luca's always had a weakness for saving broken things. The lost nurse, stripped of her license, desperate for work. His smile turned cruel. You were perfect. I knew he wouldn't be able to resist once he noticed you. The door behind Sophia opened, and heavy footsteps entered the room. She didn't need to turn to know Matteo's men had arrived. You're going to kill him, she said, her voice trembling with rage. Eventually, Matteo shrugged. But first, I'm going to take everything from him, including you. He nodded to his men. Take her to the warehouse. Make sure she's comfortable. She's our guest, after all. Rough hands grabbed Sophia's arms. She struggled, but their grip was iron tight. He'll know it was you, she snarled at Matteo. Of course he will. Matteo returned to his desk, picking up his drink. That's the point. Knowing you're in danger because of him will destroy whatever strength he has left. He'll give up the empire to save you. He raised his glass in a mock toast. Thank you for playing your part so perfectly. As the men dragged her toward the door, Sophia caught one last glimpse of Matteo's satisfied smile. She'd come here thinking she could outsmart him, but she'd only proved how dangerous the game truly was. Now she was caught in the middle of a war between cousins, and her life had become another weapon in Matteo's arsenal against Luca. The warehouse door exploded inward, metal shrieking against metal. Sophia flinched against her restraints as Luca stormed in, his presence filling the dark space like a gathering storm. His usually immaculate suit was disheveled, his eyes blazing with a fury that made her breath catch. Let her go. His voice was deadly quiet, each word precise and sharp as a blade. Matteo emerged from the shadows, flanked by 2 armed men. Cousin, he said smoothly, though Sophia could hear the underlying tension. I was wondering when you'd join us. I won't ask twice. Luca's gaze flickered to Sophia, taking in her bound wrists, the bruise forming on her cheek. Something dangerous flashed across his face. Always so dramatic. Matteo sighed, pulling out a gun. You're barely standing, Luca. The poison's been in your system for months. You can hardly throw a punch, let alone... Luca moved with shocking speed. Before Matteo could finish, Luca had crossed the space between them and slammed his fist into his cousin's jaw. The gun clattered to the floor. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Matteo's men rushed forward, but Luca was ready. He fought with a controlled violence that both terrified and mesmerized Sophia. Each movement was precise, lethal. One guard went down with a sickening crunch, while the other stumbled back, blood streaming from his nose. You've gotten sloppy, Luca taunted Matteo, who was scrambling to his feet. Too used to letting others do your dirty work. Matteo spat blood. At least I'm not weak like you, letting a woman make me soft. Sophia struggled against her bonds as the men circled each other. The rope bit into her wrists, but she could feel it starting to give. Around her, The warehouse echoed with the sounds of combat. Flesh hitting flesh, grunts of pain, the metallic taste of violence in the air. Luca and Matteo crashed together like warring storms. Despite the poison weakening him, Luca fought with a terrifying intensity, his fists connected with brutal precision, each blow calculated to inflict maximum damage. But Matteo was younger, healthier, and he managed to land several hard hits of his own. "I should have killed you years ago," Matteo snarled, driving his knee into Luca's stomach. "The family would be stronger without your weakness." Luca caught Matteo's next punch, twisting his arm back until something cracked. "The only weakness in this family is your betrayal." Sofia finally worked one hand free, just as Matteo broke away from Luca's grip. He dove for the fallen gun, and Sofia's heart stopped. Without thinking, she grabbed the nearest object, a heavy wrench, and threw it. It caught Matteo's shoulder, throwing off his aim. The bullet went wide, sparking off metal instead of finding its target in Luca's chest. The momentary distraction was all Luca needed. He tackled Matteo, and they went down hard. The fight turned savage, primal. Blood spattered across the concrete floor as fists connected with flesh. Sofia watched, frozen, as the two men who had once been as close as brothers tried to destroy each other. Luca gained the upper hand, pinning Matteo beneath him. His hands wrapped around his cousin's throat, squeezing. "You threatened what's mine," he growled, his voice barely human. "You tried to take everything from me." Matteo's face turned purple, his eyes bulging as he clawed at Luca's grip. Sofia could see the moment when something in Luca snapped, the last thread of mercy breaking. His grip tightened, and Matteo's struggles became desperate. "Luca," Sofia whispered, her voice trembling. She didn't want to stop him, not after everything Matteo had done. But she could see Luca slipping away into something darker, something that might consume him entirely. The warehouse fell silent, except for the wet sounds of Matteo choking and Luca's harsh breathing. Blood dripped from various cuts on both men, creating dark patterns on the concrete floor. The air was thick with the metallic scent of violence and the heavy weight of vengeance. Sofia watched as Luca slowly rose from Matteo's unconscious form, his knuckles raw and bleeding. The warehouse felt eerily quiet now, the violence settling like dust around them. His chest heaved with each breath, and even in the dim light, she could see the toll the fight had taken on him. He turned to her, and something in his eyes made her heart stop. Gone was the cold calculation of a Mafia boss. Instead, she saw vulnerability, fear, and something deeper that made her pulse race. "Sofia." His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. He crossed the space between them in 3 long strides, his hands coming up to frame her face. His touch was gentle, a stark contrast to the brutality she'd just witnessed. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, leaning into his touch despite herself. "I'm okay, but you're bleeding." "I don't care about that." His thumbs brushed her cheeks, wiping away tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. "When he took you, when I thought I might lose you." His jaw clenched, emotion making his voice thick. "I can't lose you, Sofia, not you." The raw honesty in his words made her breath catch. This was Luca DeMarco, the feared Mafia boss, laying his heart bare before her. His hands trembled slightly against her skin, betraying just how shaken he truly was. "I thought I could keep you at arm's length," he continued, his dark eyes searching hers. "I thought I could protect you by pushing you away, but seeing you in danger—" He pressed his forehead to hers, letting out a shaky breath. "It nearly destroyed me." Sofia's hands came up to grip his wrists, anchoring herself to him. The violence of his world should have terrified her, should have sent her running. Instead, she found herself drawn closer, like a moth to a dangerous flame. "I tried to fight this," he admitted, his voice low and intense. "I tried to tell myself you deserved better than my world, better than the danger that follows me. But I'm not strong enough to let you go. Not anymore." His confession wrapped around her heart like a vice. She could feel his pulse racing beneath her fingers, could smell the copper of blood and the expensive cologne that clung to his skin. Everything about him was intoxicating, dangerous, and completely irresistible. "The things I've done—" He pulled back slightly, his expression tormented. "The things I am— You've seen it now. You've seen what I'm capable of. I should tell you to run. I should let you go before my world destroys everything good in you." Sophia's hand came up to cup his cheek, feeling the slight tremor that ran through him at her touch. "I've seen exactly who you are, Luca. The good and the bad. The monster and the man." His eyes closed briefly, pain flashing across his features. "And still you stay?" "Yes." She pressed closer, feeling the solid warmth of him against her. "Because I've also seen how you fight for what's yours, how you protect what matters to you, how you've changed, letting me in when everything in you screams to push me away." Luca's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him. The desperation in his embrace spoke volumes about his fear of losing her. "I can't live without you," he confessed roughly. "You've become as essential as breathing. If anything happened to you—" "Nothing will happen to me," she assured him, her fingers threading through his hair. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." His grip tightened, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "My world, it's dangerous, violent. Everything I touch turns to chaos. I should be strong enough to push you away, to keep you safe." Sophia pulled back just enough to meet his gaze. "I don't want safe," she whispered. "I want you." The admission hung between them, heavy with meaning. She knew what she was choosing: a life in the shadows, constant danger, a man who killed as easily as he breathed. But she also knew she couldn't leave him. Not now. Not ever. Sophia stood by the window of Luca's study, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The last few weeks had been a blur of meetings, negotiations, and careful planning as they worked to stabilize the DeMarco empire after Matteo's betrayal. Luca sat at his desk, his fingers flying across his laptop keyboard as he reviewed financial reports. The poison was finally clearing from his system, and his strength returned more each day. Still, Sophia couldn't help but notice the slight tremor in his hands when he reached for his coffee cup. "The Rossi family has agreed to maintain their alliance," he announced, looking up at her. "That's 3 major families now backing us publicly." Sophia turned from the window, crossing to perch on the edge of his desk. "And the others?" "They're falling in line." A ghost of his old smirk played across his lips. Amazing what a show of strength can do. She reached out, straightening his tie with practiced ease. These small gestures of intimacy had become natural between them, a physical reminder of their connection. "The men are loyal to you, Luca. They always were. Matteo only had their fear." His hand caught hers, pressing it against his chest. Through his expensive shirt, she could feel his heart beating steady and strong. "They're loyal because they know I protect what's mine." His dark eyes met hers. "All of it." The possessive edge in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. She'd seen firsthand how far he would go to protect what belonged to him. The memory of Matteo's defeat was still fresh, a brutal reminder of the world she'd chosen to be part of. "Marco reports that the warehouse operations are back to normal," she said, changing the subject. Since proving her worth during the crisis, she'd taken on an unofficial role as Luca's advisor. Her medical knowledge and sharp mind had earned her respect among the family members who initially dismissed her as just another of Luca's conquests. Good. He pulled her closer, until she was practically sitting in his lap. But that's enough business for now. The Empire won't rebuild itself, she reminded him, though she made no move to pull away. The Empire can wait. His fingers traced patterns on her hip. We've been working non-stop for weeks. We deserve a moment to breathe. She understood what he wasn't saying. Despite their victory over Matteo, the trauma of nearly losing each other lingered. Every quiet moment felt precious, stolen from the chaos of their world. The security upgrades are complete, he continued, his voice softer. No one will ever get close enough to hurt us again. Sophia ran her fingers through his dark hair, smoothing it back from his forehead. You can't control everything, Luca. There will always be risks. I can try. His grip tightened slightly. I won't let anyone threaten what we've built. Not again. She saw the fierce protectiveness in his eyes, the same look he'd worn when he'd found her in Matteo's custody. It should have frightened her, this capacity for violence in the man she loved. Instead, it made her feel oddly safe, knowing his dangerous nature was now turned to keeping her protected. We're stronger now, she reminded him. The family sees it. They see us, working together, rebuilding everything better than it was before. He nodded slowly, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. They do. You've proven yourself 10 times over, Amer. Even the old guard respects you now. They respect us, she corrected. Together. Luca stood suddenly, pulling her up with him. His arms wrapped around her waist, holding her close as if he couldn't bear any distance between them. Together, he agreed. We've made it through the worst of it, Sophia. Whatever comes next, we face it as one. She melted into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of him against her. They'd survived betrayal, poison, and violence. Their love had been forged in fire, tested by blood, and emerged stronger for it all. The soft glow of candlelight danced across the massive dining table in Luca's private quarters. For once, the room felt intimate rather than imposing, with just the two of them seated at one corner rather than the full length typically filled with business associates and family members. Sophia watched as Luca poured her a glass of wine, his movements fluid and graceful now that the poison had mostly left his system. The tremors that had plagued him for so long were barely noticeable. He looked more like himself, powerful, controlled, but with a softness in his eyes when they met hers. The chef outdid himself tonight, Sophia commented, taking a bite of the perfectly prepared risotto. It was a simple meal by DeMarco standards, but somehow more meaningful for its intimacy. I told him to make your favorite. Luca's voice was low, almost gentle. You deserve to be spoiled after everything. She smiled, remembering how she'd once been just the cleaning lady, sneaking glances at this dangerous man from the shadows. Now she sat at his table as an equal, trusted and valued not just for uncovering Matteo's betrayal, but for who she was. It feels strange, she admitted, being able to just sit. No crisis to handle, no betrayals to uncover. She reached for her wine glass, the ruby liquid catching the candlelight. Almost too quiet. Luca's hand found hers across the table, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. You miss the excitement already? A hint of his usual smirk played at his lips. God, no. She laughed softly. I could use a lifetime of boring dinners after what we've been through. Boring? He raised an eyebrow. I don't think that word exists in the DeMarco vocabulary. The warmth of the wine spread through her chest as she took another sip. Well, maybe not boring, Just peaceful, like this. Luca's expression softened as he studied her face in the flickering light. You know, before you came into my life, these rooms felt like a prison sometimes. All this luxury, all this power, but it was cold. Empty. Sophia understood. She'd seen the loneliness in him from the beginning, hidden beneath layers of authority and control. And now? Now. He stood, moving around the table to pull her chair back. When she rose, he drew her into his arms, one hand settling at the small of her back. Now it feels like home. The word home hung between them, weighted with meaning. For both of them, it represented more than just the mansion with its marble floors and priceless art. Home was this, the quiet moments they carved out for themselves in the midst of their chaotic world. "Dance with me," he murmured, already starting to sway with her in his arms. There was no music playing, but they moved together naturally, finding their own rhythm in the candlelit room. Sophia rested her head against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely Luca. His heartbeat was steady under her ear, a constant reminder that they'd survived, that he was here, alive and strong, despite everything Matteo had tried to do. "I never thought I'd have this," she confessed quietly. "When I first started working here, I was just trying to survive. Then I found out about the poison and everything changed." His arms tightened around her. "You saved my life in more ways than one, Amor." The Italian endearment rolled off his tongue naturally now. "Not just from the poison. You brought light back into my world when I'd forgotten it existed." They continued their slow dance, letting the peaceful moment stretch out around them. The dinner grew cold on the table, forgotten in favor of this simple intimacy. Here, in the privacy of his quarters, Luca didn't have to be the fearsome Mafia boss. He could just be a man, holding the woman he loved, allowing himself to be vulnerable in a way he never was with anyone else. Sophia lifted her head to look at him, taking in the strong lines of his face, softened now by candlelight and affection. The dangerous world outside their door felt distant, held at bay by the strength of what they'd built together. The morning sun streamed through the mansion's bulletproof windows as Luca stood at his desk, examining reports from his street captains. Sophia watched his jaw tighten as he read, noting how his fingers drummed against the polished wood, a tell she'd learned meant trouble was brewing. "What is it?" she asked, moving closer to him. The papers scattered across his desk showed numbers that didn't add up, territories marked in red. "3 of our protection operations went dark last night," Luca said, his voice carrying that dangerous edge she knew well. "Someone's testing the waters, seeing if Matteo's poison did enough damage to make us vulnerable." Sophia placed her hand on his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "But you're stronger now. The poison might be gone, but the damage to our reputation isn't." He turned to face her, his dark eyes intense. "Word got out about my weakness. Now every 2-bit criminal thinks they can take a piece of what's mine." Marco entered without knocking, his face grim. "Boss, Giovanni's requesting an emergency meeting. Says it can't wait." Luca's expression hardened. Giovanni was one of his oldest captains, running the lucrative dock operations. A request like this meant serious trouble. "Set it up in the West Wing conference room," Luca ordered. "Full security protocol." Sophia started to step away, but Luca caught her wrist. "Stay," he said softly. Then to Marco, "She's part of this now. I want her there." Marco's face remained carefully neutral, but Sophia caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Not everyone in the organization approved of her elevated status, but Luca's word was law. The conference room filled quickly with Luca's most trusted men. Giovanni, A stocky man with graying temples sat directly across from Luca. His usual confident demeanor was replaced with nervous energy. "Talk," Luca commanded, his authority filling the room. "3 shipments hijacked," Giovanni reported, spreading photos across the table. "Professional job. They knew exactly when and where to hit us." He paused, the implication heavy in the air. It had to be an inside job. Sophia studied the faces around the table. Some showed genuine shock, others carefully controlled expressions. She'd learned to read people during her nursing days, and something about the way Antonio, one of the younger captains, kept glancing at his phone set off warning bells. Luca must have noticed too. His voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "Antonio, you seem distracted. Something more important than our business?" The young captain's head snapped up. "No, boss, just checking security updates." "Hand me your phone," Luca ordered softly. The room went deadly silent. Antonio's hesitation lasted only a fraction of a second, but it was enough. He bolted for the door, but Marco was faster. The bodyguard had him pinned to the wall before he could take 3 steps. Luca rose slowly, his movement deliberate and predatory. "I was wondering who would be first to try exploiting our perceived weakness." He took the phone from Antonio's trembling hands. "Let's see who you've been talking to." Sophia watched as Luca scrolled through messages, his expression growing darker with each swipe. When he looked up, his eyes were cold enough to freeze hell itself. "The Rossetti family?" Luca's voice was deceptively calm. "You sold us out to those bottom feeders?" Antonio's face went pale. They said with you being sick, it was time for a change, that the DeMarco empire was finished. And you believed them?" Luca stepped closer to the traitor. "After everything my family has done for yours?" The tension in the room was suffocating. Sophia knew what happened to traitors in this world, had seen enough to understand the price of betrayal. But watching it unfold, seeing the ruthless side of the man she loved, still made her heart race. Antonio's eyes darted to her, desperate. "Please," he begged. "Sophia, you understand mercy." "Don't you dare speak to her," Luca snarled, his control finally cracking. "You lost the right to ask anything of this family the moment you betrayed us." The early morning sun filtered through the mansion's bulletproof windows as Luca stood at the head of the conference table, his presence commanding attention from every captain gathered. Sophia sat to his right, her posture straight and confident despite the tension filling the room. She was no longer just the cleaning lady who had uncovered a poisoning plot. She had earned her place at this table. "Antonio's betrayal won't be the last," Luca announced, his voice carrying across the silent room. "The Rossetti family thinks we're weak. They're wrong." His dark eyes swept across the faces of his captains. "We're going to show them exactly how wrong they are." Sophia studied the men around the table. She had learned to read their subtle tells over the past months, the way they shifted in their seats, how their eyes darted between each other. Some still looked uncertain about her presence, but none dared question Luca's decision to include her. "The dock operations?" Marco asked from his position by the door. "We double security," Luca replied. "But first," he pressed a button on his phone, and the screen behind him lit up with surveillance photos. "We deal with our rat problem." The images showed Antonio meeting with various members of the Rossetti family. Dates, times, locations, all meticulously documented. Sophia recognized some of the locations from her own investigations while helping Luca recover from the poisoning. "These meetings go back months," Sophia observed, her voice clear and steady, "before Matteo's betrayal was exposed." Luca nodded, his hand brushing against hers under the table. "The Rossettis were playing both angles. They backed Matteo's poison plot while setting up a secondary plan with Antonio." One of the older captains, Giuseppe, leaned forward. "What do you suggest, boss?" "We hit them where it hurts," Luca stated. "Their money laundering operation through the casino district." He turned to Sophia. "You noticed something about their patterns, didn't you?" Sophia stood, approaching the screen. During her nights helping Luca sort through financial records, she had spotted irregularities that others had missed. Her experience tracking medication discrepancies at the hospital had given her a unique perspective on following paper trails. "They're moving money every third Thursday," she explained, pointing to the data. "Small amounts through multiple accounts, but always following the same pattern." She turned to face the captains. "It's predictable, and predictable means vulnerable." The men exchanged glances, but this time there was respect in their eyes. She had proven herself not just as Luca's partner, but as someone who could contribute to the family's success. "We strike next Thursday," Luca declared. "Marco, coordinate with the tech team. I want their entire system compromised." He paused, his expression hardening. "And find out who else Antonio might have corrupted in our ranks." The meeting continued as they hammered out details of the operation. Sophia contributed when needed, her medical knowledge proving useful in planning contingencies. The dynamic between her and Luca was seamless. Where he saw force, she saw strategy. Where she sought precision, he provided power. As the captains filed out, Luca remained standing at the head of the table, his shoulders tense with the weight of leadership. Sophia approached him, placing a hand on his arm. "You're doing the right thing," she said softly. "The family needs to see strength now more than ever." He turned to her, his expression softening in a way it did only for her. "We're doing the right thing," he corrected. "I wouldn't be here without you, Sophia. You saved my life, exposed Matteo's betrayal, and now you're helping me rebuild everything." "We're partners," she replied simply. "In all of it." Luca pulled her closer, his touch gentle despite the violence she knew his hands were capable of. "Partners," he agreed. "And after we deal with the Rossettis, I want to make it official. You'll have equal say in all family matters." Sophia looked up at him, seeing not just the powerful Mafia boss, but the man who had learned to trust and love despite his dangerous world. They had come so far from their first encounter, her watching him collapse from poison, him dismissing her as just another servant. "The captains are starting to accept me," she noted. "Even Giuseppe seemed impressed today." "They respect strength," Luca said, "and you've shown more strength than any of them." His eyes darkened with determination. "We'll secure the family's future together. No more betrayals, no more threats from the shadows." The room fell silent as Marco burst through the door, his face ashen. "Boss, we've got movement at the docks. The Rossettis, they're making their play now." Luca's jaw tightened as he exchanged a look with Sophia. They had prepared for this, anticipated every possible angle. The surveillance photos spread across his desk showed weeks of careful planning, but the Rossettis had decided to strike first. "How many?" Luca demanded, already reaching for his phone. "At least 30 men," Marco reported. "They've got Antonio with them. He's leading the charge." Sophia's mind raced through the implications. Antonio had been with the DeMarco family for years, but his betrayal ran deeper than anyone had suspected. The dock operations were crucial. Losing them would cripple the family's legitimate businesses. "Call in our people," Luca ordered Marco, "and get Giuseppe to secure the warehouse district." He turned to Sophia, his eyes dark with determination. "You remember the contingency we discussed?" She nodded, already moving toward the safe hidden behind the painting. Her fingers worked quickly over the keypad as she recalled the plan they'd crafted during those long nights of preparation. Inside the safe lay a USB drive containing everything they needed to destroy the Rossetti family's financial empire. Their accounts are vulnerable during transfers, Sophia said, handling the drive carefully. If we time this right, we can wipe them out while they're distracted with the docs, Luca finished. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. This is why we work, Sophia. You see what others miss. They moved with practiced efficiency. While Luca coordinated the defense of the docks, Sophia connected with their tech team. Months of studying the Rossetti's patterns had revealed their weakness, their reliance on automated systems during major operations. The security feed showed the firefight breaking out at the docks. Luca's men had been ready, positioned exactly where Sophia had suggested based on her analysis of previous attacks. The Rossettis had walked right into their trap. They're in position, Sophia announced, watching the numbers scroll across her screen. Starting the transfer now. Luca stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder, as they watched their plan unfold. The Rossettis had thought they could take advantage of what they perceived as weakness in the DeMarco family. They hadn't counted on Sophia's strategic mind or Luca's ability to adapt. Antonio's trying to breach the east entrance, Marco reported through the comm link. Let him, Luca commanded, his voice cold. That's exactly where we want him. Sophia's fingers flew over the keyboard, executing the program they'd prepared. One by one, the Rossetti family's accounts began to empty. Their entire financial network, built over generations, crumbled in minutes. Gunfire echoed through the comm link, but Sophia remained focused. This was her battlefield now, just as surely as the docks belonged to Luca. She had learned to navigate this world of violence and power, finding her own way to fight back. Transfer complete, she announced, just as Marco's voice crackled through again. Antonio's down, he reported. The Rossettis are retreating. Luca's hand tightened on Sophia's shoulder. Send them the message now. Sophia pressed enter, and across the city, the Rossetti family's phones lit up with proof of their destruction. Every account drained, every secret exposed, every ally turned against them. The message was clear. The DeMarco family was stronger than ever. It's done, Sophia said softly, standing to face Luca. He pulled her into his arms, his embrace fierce and protective. We did this together, he murmured against her hair. Just like everything else. Through the window, they could see cars speeding away from the docks, the Rossettis fleeing with their wounded pride and empty accounts. They had thought Luca was vulnerable, that Sophia was his weakness. Instead, she had become his greatest strength. Marco appeared in the doorway, holstering his weapon. The docks are secure, boss. And we just got word. The Rossetti Patriarch is requesting a meeting. They're finished. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Luca's office, casting a warm glow over the mahogany desk where countless battles had been planned. Sophia stood by the window, watching the gardeners tend to the rose bushes below. The simple sight seemed surreal after everything they'd been through. Luca approached from behind, his footsteps quiet on the thick carpet. His arms slipped around her waist, and she felt the tension in his body finally beginning to ease. The Rossetti threat was neutralized. Matteo was gone, and the poisoning that had nearly destroyed him was now just a bitter memory. I never thought I'd have this, he murmured against her neck. Peace. A future worth looking forward to. Sophia turned in his embrace, studying the face she'd come to love. The hardness was still there. It would always be there in a man like Luca DeMarco, but his eyes had softened when they met hers. She reached up to touch his cheek, remembering how close she'd come to losing him. When I first started working here, she said, I thought I was just cleaning houses to make ends meet. I never imagined that you'd save my life? Luca's smile held a hint of his usual dangerous charm. That you'd help me take down my enemies and secure my empire? That I'd fall in love with the most feared man in the city, she corrected, watching his expression soften further. Marco knocked briefly before entering, carrying a stack of papers. "The final reports from the dock cleanup, boss, and the Rossetti assets have been fully integrated into our operations." Luca nodded, not moving away from Sophia. They'd earned the right to this closeness, this open display of affection. The family had accepted her not just as Luca's woman, but as a force to be reckoned with in her own right. "Everything's secure?" Sophia asked, her strategic mind still alert despite their victory. "More than secure," Marco confirmed. "The other families have sent their congratulations. Your reputation has only grown stronger, boss. They're calling Sophia your secret weapon." A proud smile curved Luca's lips. "They have no idea." Marco left them alone again, and Sophia moved to the desk, running her fingers over the smooth wood. How many nights had she spent here, poring over documents and security footage, learning the intricacies of Luca's world? The cleaning cart that had once been her shield was long gone, replaced by the confidence that came with truly belonging. "I had the necklace destroyed," Luca said, coming to stand beside her. "The family heirloom that Matteo used to poison me. It seemed fitting to break with that particular tradition." Sophia nodded, remembering how that necklace had first alerted her to the plot against him. "Some traditions are worth breaking, and some are worth keeping." Luca reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. Inside lay a delicate gold chain with a simple pendant, a key. "This is yours. It opens every door in the mansion, every safe, every secure room. No more sneaking around." Sophia's throat tightened with emotion as he fastened the necklace around her neck. The key rested just above her heart, a symbol of complete trust from a man who had learned the hard way how rare true loyalty could be. "The family's having a dinner tonight," Luca said, his hands lingering on her shoulders. "To celebrate our victory. But more than that, to celebrate us." She turned to face him, seeing their future reflected in his eyes. The darkness would always be part of their world. It was who they were, who they had become together. But they had found light in each other, strength in their partnership. Taking his hand, Sophia felt the warmth of his skin against hers. They'd fought their way through betrayal and violence, through poison and pride, to reach this moment. Together, they'd built something unbreakable. Luca squeezed her hand gently, and they walked toward the door, ready to face whatever came next. The DeMarco Empire was stronger than ever, and at its heart stood a love forged in fire and tempered by trust. Sophia stood at the window of Luca's office, no, their office now, watching the morning sun cast long shadows across the DeMarco estate's manicured lawns. The mansion felt different today, lighter somehow, as if Matteo's betrayal and all the darkness had been washed away with the dawn. Behind her, Luca worked quietly at his desk, the soft scratch of his pen against paper a comforting rhythm. He'd insisted she move her things in here, claiming he worked better with her nearby. The truth was, they both slept easier knowing the other was within reach. "The Gambino family sent another gift," Sophia said, gesturing to the elaborate flower arrangement that had arrived that morning. "That's the third one this week." Luca looked up, his dark eyes warming as they met hers. "They're trying to curry favor. News travels fast in our world. Everyone knows you're the reason the DeMarco Empire still stands." Sophia moved away from the window, running her fingers along the edge of her new desk. The polished mahogany gleamed under her touch, a stark contrast to the cleaning cart she'd pushed through these halls just months ago. "I didn't do it alone." "No," Luca agreed, rising from his chair. "But you saw what others missed. You fought for me when everyone else was waiting for me to fall." He crossed the room to her, his movements fluid and predatory despite his formal suit. The poison that had once weakened him was gone, leaving behind the powerful man she'd first glimpsed beneath the illness. Sophia felt her breath catch as he drew near. Even now, after everything they'd been through, his presence still affected her like this, a mixture of desire and awe that made her pulse quicken. "Marco said the last of Matteo's supporters have been dealt with," she said, trying to keep her voice steady as Luca's hands found her waist. His thumbs traced slow circles against her silk blouse. "The cleanup is complete. The other families have accepted the new order. Even the old guard has fallen in line. They've seen what happens to those who underestimate us. Us." The word sent a thrill through her. She'd earned her place here, fought for it with everything she had. The former nurse who'd spotted a poisoning attempt had become something more, a partner, a protector, a queen in this dangerous world of theirs. "The staff whispers about you," Luca continued, a hint of pride in his voice. "They say you're as fierce as any made man, but with a nurse's touch, healing what's broken while protecting what's ours." "And what do you say?" Sophia challenged, tilting her head to meet his gaze. His eyes darkened with intensity. "I say you're everything I never knew I needed. The strength behind my throne, the heart I thought I'd lost." His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing across her lower lip. "My salvation, in more ways than one." The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching the gold threads in his dark hair. Sophia remembered how close she'd come to losing him. The nights spent watching him struggle against the poison, the desperate race to uncover Matteo's plot, the final confrontation that had nearly cost them everything. "We built something here," she whispered. "Something stronger than before." "We did." Luca's voice was soft but certain. "And now it's time to build something more." He stepped back, reaching into his pocket, and Sophia's heart stuttered as he withdrew a small velvet box. The sun caught the diamond as he opened it, a stunning piece that somehow managed to be both elegant and fierce, just like them. "I've ruled through fear," he said, holding her gaze, "led through strength and cunning. But with you, I've learned there's power in love too, in trust, in building something together instead of taking it by force." Sophia's eyes stung with unshed tears as Luca sank to one knee before her, the gesture more meaningful coming from a man who bowed to no one. "Marry me," he said simply. "Rule beside me, not just as my partner in business, but as my wife, my equal in everything." The diamond caught the light again, but Sophia couldn't look away from Luca's face, from the vulnerability and love she saw there, emotions he showed to her alone. The late afternoon sun bathed the DeMarco mansion's grand ballroom in golden light, filtering through the tall windows and casting warm shadows across the marble floors. Sophia stood before the ornate mirror, adjusting the delicate lace of her wedding dress. The ivory silk hugged her curves before flowing into a dramatic train, a design that perfectly balanced elegance with authority. Behind her, the room buzzed with activity as the staff made final preparations for the reception. The ceremony had been intimate but powerful, a declaration of their unity that sent ripples through the underworld. Every major family had sent representatives, all eager to witness the marriage that had strengthened the DeMarco empire rather than divided it. "You look beautiful, Mrs. DeMarco," Marco said from the doorway, his usual stern expression softened by genuine respect. He'd become one of their most trusted allies after helping expose Matteo's betrayal. Sophia turned, a smile playing at her lips. "Thank you, Marco. Is everything secure?" "Every entrance covered, every guest vetted twice. Nothing will disturb your day." He paused, then added, "Luca's waiting in his study. He asked for you." Sophia's heart quickened. Even now, after everything they'd been through, the mention of his name affected her. She gathered her skirts and made her way through the mansion's corridors, past artwork worth millions and security systems worth more. This was her home now, her kingdom as much as his. She found Luca standing by the window of his study, cut a striking figure in his black tuxedo. He turned at her entrance, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her breath catch. This was the man who'd fought his way back from the brink of death, who'd eliminated his enemies with ruthless efficiency, who now looked at her like she was his entire world. "Sophia," he breathed, crossing the room to her. His hands found her waist, pulling her close. "My wife." The words sent a thrill through her. "Husband," she returned, reaching up to straighten his tie. "The families are already talking. They say we've changed things, shown that power can be shared, not just taken." "Let them talk." His thumb traced her lower lip. "They don't understand what we've built here. This isn't just about power anymore." Sophia leaned into his touch, remembering how far they'd come. From the day she'd first suspected the poisoning to now, they'd forged something unprecedented in their world. A partnership of equals, built on trust as much as strength. "The old guard said a woman could never hold real power in this world," she mused, "that I'd weaken you." Luca's laugh was dark and rich. "They learned their lesson when you helped me eliminate Matteo's entire network, when you negotiated that deal with the Rossis that doubled our territory." His grip tightened possessively. "You didn't weaken anything. You made us unstoppable." Music drifted up from the ballroom below, reminding them of their waiting guests, but neither moved, savoring this moment of privacy before returning to their public roles. "Do you remember," Sophia asked, "that first day in your study? When I watched you collapse and knew something was wrong?" "I remember waking up to find you studying my drinking glass with those sharp nurse's eyes." His fingers traced patterns on her back. "You saved my life that day, in more ways than one." "We saved each other," she corrected. And now we rule together," Luca finished. "Every decision, every move we make, we do it as one." He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. The power that radiated from him, once intimidating, now felt like a shared strength. They'd faced betrayal, violence, and death itself, emerging stronger each time. Sophia wound her arms around his neck, feeling the solid warmth of him. This was real. Their victory, their love, their future stretching out before them. In this world of shadows and danger, they'd found something true. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.